Today we uncover some of the most infamous criminals at ADX Florence, Colorado. America's highest security federal prison, ADX, is home to some of the world's most notorious criminals, including Mexican drug kingpin El Chapo, shoe bomber Richard Reed, and Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Just a 2-hour drive from Denver, on a 49-acre compound in the middle of Fremont County, sits America's highest security federal prison, U.S. Penitentiary Florence Administrative Maximum Facility, colloquially known as ADX. It's the only federal supermax prison in the country, and no one has ever escaped the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Opened in November 1994, the facility sits on the outskirts of Florence, a small town in Fremont County, also known as Colorado's correctional capital. As of July 2024, ADX incarcerates 335 men convicted of federal crimes. In other words, these inmates aren't your white-collar criminals. We're talking serial killers, terrorists, mobsters, cult leaders, drug kingpins, and offenders who have proven themselves adept at escape, prone to violence, or otherwise unreformable. Many ADX prisoners live in near-continuous solitary confinement inside a soundproof 7 by 12-foot cell, a controversial policy that prison reform advocates have decried. There is a single 4-inch slit for a window, a bed, desk, and stool made of poured concrete, and a stainless steel sink and toilet combo. Pending good behavior, prisoners can earn 10 or more hours per week handcuffed outside of their cells in a caged confinement or a concrete pit, similar to an emptied swimming pool. Up to 4 15-minute phone calls are allowed per month, and visitation rights are significantly restricted, if allowed at all. The average American might not be aware of ADX, but the institution often makes front-page news because you've probably heard of some of its most infamous residents. Leading the Sinaloa cartel and sentenced to life plus 30 years. Some might say El Chapo is the Houdini of hard time. Before being sent to ADX, the longtime leader of the Sinaloa cartel had escaped from Mexican maximum security prisons twice. First, he bribed prison guards at Jalisco's Puente Grande in 2001, but his jailbreak from El Altiplano in the summer of 2015 is the stuff of movies. El Chapo fled the facility on a motorcycle via an underground tunnel and led law enforcement on a 6-month manhunt, complete with a deadly gunfight and the drug king slipping out of an escape hatch hidden behind a closet mirror. The Mexican Marines finally recaptured him in January 2016 near the town of Juan Jose Rio in northern Sinaloa. Now serving a life sentence plus 30 years in ADX Florence for 10 charges related to narcotics trafficking, money laundering, and weapons, El Chapo continues to make headlines. In early 2023, he sent a letter, described by one of his attorneys as an SOS, to Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, requesting to complete his sentence in Mexico because his treatment in Colorado was psychological torment, CBS reported. In March 2024, El Chapo wrote another letter to the federal judge who sentenced his case back in 2019 to request visitation rights with his wife, who was released from jail after serving time for helping run the billion-dollar drug operation, and twice-a-month 15-minute phone calls with their twin daughters. His request was denied in April. Known for the Oklahoma City bombing and sentenced to 161 consecutive life terms, Terry Lynn Nichols met Timothy J. McVeigh while they were serving in the U.S. Army in the late 80s. The pair became vehement anti-government conspiracy theorists, studied bomb-making together at gun shows, and plotted to destroy the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. Their bombs, which McVeigh parked outside of the building and detonated on the morning of April 19, 1995, ultimately killed 168 people, including 19 children and babies, and injured hundreds of others. Nichols received 161 consecutive life sentences for his role in the bombing. McVeigh, who was judged to be the mastermind behind the Oklahoma City bombing, was executed by lethal injection at USP Terre Haute in 2001. Next up, known for founding Chicago's Gangster Disciples, sentenced to 6 life terms, a transplant from Mississippi, Larry Hoover got involved with gangs in Illinois at just 13 years old, later becoming synonymous with Chicago's largest and most well-known gang, the Gangster Disciples. Hoover, also known as King Hoover, is credited as a co-founder of the Gangster Disciple Nation, a sprawling organized crime ring. In 1973, he commissioned the killing of a drug dealer named William Young, who he suspected was stealing drugs and money from the Gangster Disciples, and was sentenced to 150 to 200 years in prison. However, A federal investigation is said to have uncovered decades of Hoover's gang leadership in prison, which included overseeing its lucrative business and more than 30,000 members throughout 35 states. In 1997, Hoover was convicted of drug conspiracy and extortion and transferred to ADX Florence, in an effort to prevent him from conducting any criminal activity with the outside world. In 2018, musician and fellow Chicagoan Kanye West asked President Donald Trump to pardon Hoover. That same year, Trump signed the First Step Act, for which West and his then-wife Kim Kardashian lobbied, into law. The First Step Act addresses superfluous and discriminatory drug sentencing and aims to improve prison conditions. It also resulted in the release of 3,100 inmates for good behavior. Federal agents urged against applying any clemency to Hoover, however, who is suspected of continuing to pull strings in the gang world using coded messages sent from prison. In December 2021, rappers West and Drake threw a free Larry Hoover benefit concert at the LA Memorial Coliseum, which was live-streamed on Amazon Prime. The concert would prove ineffective. Larry Hoover remains in ADX serving 6 life sentences. Next up, known for serial murder, sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without parole. Joseph Michael Swango was a physician who spent most of the 1980s and 90s using his access to patients during medical school and beyond to poison patients, and sometimes colleagues. Despite thoroughly creeping out plenty of people by the time he earned his degree from Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, Swango secured an internship at what was then known as the Ohio State University Medical Center in 1983. This is where his prolific career as a serial killer would purportedly begin. It is believed that Swango murdered more than 60 people, often by poisoning them with arsenic or intentionally overdosing them with something they were prescribed, though he could only be charged with 4 homicides. Swango was sentenced to 3 life terms in prison in 2000. Next up, known for being a 9/11 conspirator, sentenced life without the possibility of parole. Zacarias Moussaoui was arrested in August 2001 when, after several months of aviation school, his flight instructor reported his suspicious behavior to the FBI. Reportedly, Moussaoui asked nonsensical questions, only expressed interest in how to lift off and land a plane, had no background in aviation nor a private pilot's license, and paid for the $6,300 course in cash. Moussaoui, who was born to Moroccan parents in France, was charged in December 2001 for 6 counts of conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism, aircraft piracy, and more for his involvement in the preparation for the September 11, 2001, attack that killed 2,977 people. During the trial, he claimed he and Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, were supposed to fly a 5th plane into the White House. Moussaoui is, as of June 2024, the only person convicted of a crime in connection with 9/11s in a U.S. court. Next up, known for being a co-conspirator in the 1998 Yemen kidnappings, sentence life. Abu Hamza was born in Alexandria, Egypt in 1958 and moved to London where he espoused radical views as an imam at Finsbury Park Mosque. He was arrested in England in 2004 for his alleged connection with the 1998 Yemen kidnappings that turned deadly. 16 Western tourists were kidnapped in the Abiyan region of Yemen. A shootout with the Yemeni military would leave 4 hostages and 3 kidnappers dead. Hamza was reportedly found to have associations with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Aden Abiyan Islamic Army, a Yemen-based Islamist militant group. After extradition to the U.S. in 2012, Hamza was convicted in 2014 of all 11 terrorism-related charges and sentenced to life in prison. Hamza is currently petitioning U.S. courts to send him back to England as his health deteriorates under the inhuman and degrading treatment at ADX. Hamza is a double amputee and blind in one eye, allegedly after a chemical explosion in 1993, and legal filings state that the metal hooks he used as prostheses have been removed, his teeth are rotting, and he is kept in 24/7 confinement. Last up we have Ted John Kaczynski, known for being the Unabomber, sentenced 8 consecutive life terms, cause of death, suicide. Ted Kaczynski, born Theodore John Kaczynski, grew up in a Chicago suburb and was by all accounts a brilliant student. He was admitted to Harvard University at the age of 16 and earned his doctorate in mathematics from the University of Michigan at age 25. At Harvard, He took part in a 3-year ethically questionable psychological study that some speculate may have attributed to his later extremist beliefs and behavior. In 1971, Kaczynski began his reclusive life in a secluded cabin in Montana, where he penned his infamous manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, and began a 17-year effort to sabotage what he called the industrial technological system. He mailed 16 homemade bombs that ultimately killed 3 people before he was discovered in 1996. Kaczynski was charged with 3 counts of homicide, 10 federal violations related to bombs, and was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms without parole. Kaczynski was transferred from ADX to the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, in December 2021 with late-stage rectal cancer, but the Federal Bureau of Prisons would not confirm the reason for his transfer due to safety and security reasons. The 81-year-old hanged himself with a shoelace on June 10, 2023. That's a snapshot of just a few of the most infamous inmates at ADX Florence, Colorado, and as always, although there are convictions in this matter, I must stress that an indictment is not evidence of guilt. Charges are only allegations, and each defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Blessings. Luke 17 verses 3-4. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him.